Young, dumb, inexperienced. I just accepted it. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hello, welcome. This is Essential Patience and I am Patience. And in today's video, I am going to talk about the time I got scammed buying a car. This is an experience that I've told very few people, even in my life. During the whole process, I was like, maybe I should share this with more people. I'm sure there are people who have definitely been through this, going through this, or will possibly face something like this in the future. And I want to share with you my experience and actions that I took to put myself in a better position, how I stood up for myself. Could have stood up for myself a little bit more. First experience with the dealership, and there's so many things that hindsight I would have been more pressing on. Just because I couldn't do it doesn't mean you can. Let's go through this. It's gonna be a wild ride. You know I like to give good details. I just don't want to say like, hey, I was scammed. I want to give you all the facts. I will be giving numbers, and in the end you can come to your own conclusions. I'm sure there are a lot of people who've been to dealerships and felt taken advantage of, but I want to share it just in case there's somebody out there going through this right now. So let's begin where it started, which was January of 2023. So last year, I moved to Texas back in June, and I did not have a car. I never had a car before. I literally just got my driver's license a few months earlier, and I used to use a lot of public transportation. But Texas is such a driving state. There's barely any public transportation around where I live, so you need a car. Luckily for me, my job was not too far away. I used to take Ubers to grocery shop, my job, anywhere. Glad I had support from my church. I had a friend who would come pick me up. We'd go to church together and she would drop me off. Shout out to her, she's watching. And so I was ready to buy my car. I had been saving up money for a car since I was in college. Rising car prices had made it more difficult. Back in college, I had this idea that when I graduated back in 2022, I was going to buy like a $12,000 Toyota Corolla that was maybe 5 years old. By then depreciation would have really hit. Unfortunately, after the panini, the car prices just went up. I definitely knew it from an insider perspective because I worked for a car company. For a couple of weeks we had to stop production, lack of parts, supply chain issues. Cars were not being produced as fast as they were needed, and also during the height of it, people were not going to be in factories because some of those plants, they are large. At least the plants that I worked in, it was a very large plant, and hundreds of people every day, and it was a 24-hour plant. But essentially, I couldn't get a car for $12,000, at least not the car that I wanted. So I ended up raising my budget to $19,000, which I thought would be sufficient for a used car. Even though I worked for a car company, I was not a car person. I barely knew how to drive when I was working at a car company. People were like, you can't drive? I was like, no. $19,000 was going to be sufficient for a used car, but I was convinced by other people, and I convinced myself, I agreed, that a new car would be just a little bit more expensive. Put a pin in that. When you buy a car that is used, you're inheriting other people's problems. You may not know all the car facts. It takes a little bit more to make sure that the car is in good condition, the extended warranty. The maintenance is going to be much quicker. So in a few years, I'll probably have to be changing brakes, transmission, engine, whatever. Versus the car that I buy, I know all the facts. I know what's going on. I would have much more time to have those repairs come on. Because of the fact that I drive not a lot of miles, it's going to take a long time before a great amount of maintenance is needed, especially if I take good care of the car, which I am. So because of that, I had to change my budgets again, and I changed it to $25,000. That's a lot of money, and I was set on buying a Toyota Corolla, the model L, so the most basic form of a Toyota Corolla, because I'm like, I don't need anything fancy. I'm not really driving anywhere. I'm good with an L. And my sister convinced me to go up a little bit more just in case. So an LE, which would be in the low 20,000s plus sales tax, plus a little bit more for something extra. I did a little research on the car. I went to toyota.com. I chose the Corolla, like the whole build your own car. So I was looking at MSRP, manufacturer suggested retail price, and that dealerships try to add more, but I wanted to make sure I'm well informed. I didn't really have a lot of preferences. I'm glad there were people around me who were giving me information, and I actually had an elder in my church who took me to a dealership, did a really good job guiding me, helping me with the driving. But I was young then, I was 22 years old, so I was doing a lot of stuff on my own, and I wish I'd been more communicative and like asked him more questions, because he would have probably been more of a bigger help had I spoken up earlier. But I felt like, oh, I'm an adult. Once to handle this. So I had him with me as somebody that wouldn't be taken so much advantage of, which if he wasn't there, I don't know, I'd be scammed out of so much more money. I wish I'd involved him more and utilized his help more. Don't go to dealership alone if you're a young lady, especially, or if you're a young person. So when I walked into the dealership, they asked me what car I wanted, and I told them brand new Toyota Corolla 2023 LE. Well, they didn't have an LE, so they upsold me almost immediately to an SE. And that was the first time I should have, put my foot down, maybe walked out, waited. I didn't do that. I just took the upsell, which was mistake number 0. I took the upsell, I was like, fine. And then it was a hatchback, which I didn't have much of a big preference on it, so a hatchback was just fine. It was about a little over $1,000 more, so I was gonna go up to maybe $2650, still going up a little bit, but not too much. And honestly, I was slightly desperate for a car, and maybe that was what I was exuding, desperation, because I really wanted to drive. I wanted to be able to go places, and I had plans coming up to go to school, events coming up, and I really wanted a car. When I also went, I had my pay statement, so I think they asked for pay stubs, and I think I had my bank statement, so I can't be really sure, but I know I at least had my pay stub, so they knew how much money I was making and how much I could afford. Throughout this video, I'm going to give you some red flags and some mistakes, just to keep track of things that I ignored and mistakes that I made, and taking some sort of accountability for this as well. So red flag number 1, they were trying to push me to lease a car. I walked in there to buy a car, but when I tell you that they were coming to me with leasing options left and right, and that, oh, you can get more car if you just lease it, I'm like, no sir, I'm here to buy a car. Okay, I'm not trying to be doing payments. So they offered me a 5-year lease. I'm like, no, I don't want to lease a car, like especially for 5 years. I was like, what happens after 5 years? They're like, well, you can go to another lease. And I'm like, so I wouldn't own a car, I'll still be on payments. And I think he looked at me like it was something weird, but I was like, no, I'm not going to take the risk of paying, I think at that point it was like $350 per month for 5 years, and then after have the option of buying the car out at like $15,000. No sir, the calculation did not even make sense in a favorable way. And I think what he was trying to say is like the monthly payments, but like for me, that was not what I was looking at, which goes into red flag number 2. Something that he said when I said I didn't want any of the added on packages to the car. He said something to the effect of, well, today's a Friday, which I went in on Friday. He was like, well, tomorrow there'll be a bunch of people who would not like bat an eye with the added on packages, like they would just buy the car. And I'm not exaggerating what he's saying. I guess it was to get me more urgent, as if there's not going to be more cars. This was not the last car on earth, but he made it seem that way, that if I wasn't open to paying more for the car. So of course there was the MSRP, but then also they added on packages on top of the MSRP that were non-negotiable. Car prices are sky high, selling for more than they ever were worth. That was another red flag number 2, and that I should have paid attention to. I should have walked out, but I was screaming of desperation for that car because I really wanted a car. Don't do this to yourself. So that was my mistake number 1, and I think they could tell that I wanted to drive out of there with a car. Like we didn't even come with a car, we came in an Uber, because the point was that we're there to buy a car and then we would get some driving lessons in. I shouldn't have done that. I should have been ready to walk out, and I wasn't, and they could tell. Something they did keep pushing on me after the lease was this monthly payment. How much do you want your monthly payments to be? How much do you want to pay per month? And that really was something that I expected, because I watched a YouTube video on it about how they get you with the monthly payment. So you focus so much on how much you can afford rather than can you afford the car. From the video that I watched, let's say you tell them you can afford $400 per month. Well, how long can they get you $400? Can they get you for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? And now some car loans are like 9 years. If you say you can afford $400, well, they can tack in so much stuff that they can upsell you, but you're so focused on being able to pay $400 that you don't look at the fact that you now have a 7-year loan with a whole bunch of unnecessary things. So I told them I was focused on the out of door price, and I wanted a 3-year loan. That was something that I made it clear from the beginning. I did not care about the monthly payments, which will be my next mistake. I'll go into that. But I did say that. I was like, I don't care about the monthly payment. I care about the out of door price and a 3-year loan. And also made it clear I did not want any gap insurance, any type of warranties, any packages they wanted to upsell me. I was not interested. I wanted a 3-year loan, and I wanted to know what the out-of-door price was. Which moves on to my number 2 mistake, which was I don't care about the monthly payments. On the surface level, based on the videos that I watched, it sounded like a good thing to say, okay, I don't care about the monthly payment because I don't want you just tacking on a bunch of crap. But in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have said that. Here's why. Because I said that several times, they at least had my pay statements and they had how much I paid in rent. At that time, I was 22 years old, professional career, and I know debt. They ask you typically, do you have student loan debt, credit card debt, personal loan debt? I had zero debt. I had rent, which my rent was pretty cheap. Essentially, in their eyes, it's like, hey, this girl has a really low rent and the rest of her money can go to this card payment. And I kept saying, I don't care about the monthly payment. Don't say that. So essentially, I just put myself in this position where they saw an opportunity to tack me on with a high monthly payment if they made it a reasonable term. That was not my thought process because I'd never been through this process before. And I already knew one angle, the angle I found out on YouTube. But I definitely didn't think that maybe pointing out to them that you don't care about the monthly payment motivate them to give you a higher monthly payment and still tack on all those ridiculous fees. It just will be in a more suitable term. Throughout the entire process, and this goes to mistake number 3, I felt like something was not right, especially when I got to finance. I just kept feeling like somebody was trying to take advantage of me, and I didn't listen to myself because I'm like, this is my first time going through this process. I'm nervous. I'm desperate for a car. Why was I acting like this was the last car on earth? As if I couldn't go to another Toyota dealership. I think also part of me knowing that somebody had taken a day off to come with me. I just don't like being a burden on a person. So because of that, I just wanted to get a car and be like, let's just do this. But I felt like something wasn't right and I should have listened to myself. I should have walked out. I should have come back another day and be like, well, let me think it over. But because I just kept going along with it, that's another reason, and that's another thing I have to take accountability for. So in the future, if I ever feel that way, I would definitely validate my own feelings and walk out. But I think it's easier to say because like I have a car now, I have the experience now. But when you're beginning, you don't have all of that. Knowing that I did the best with what I had at the moment, learning for the future. It would only be a stupid mistake if I don't learn from that. And I've certainly learned. My mistake number 4 was certainly signing some blank pages in finance. When I went into finance, I did tell them I don't want gap insurance. I don't want warranties. I said the exact same thing. I told them I wanted a 3-year loan. But yet, when it was time to sign, I was signing a bunch of blank things. It was just like sign here, sign here, sign here. And I kept signing. I wasn't asking. I thought it was just sign up for the car, signing up for the down payments I was going to put down, rather than signing for a bunch of things that I did not know. Never at this point, after I said I don't want any gap insurance, any warranties, any package, no point did this man say, this is you signing for a warranty. Sign here if you want that warranty. Because I would have said no. If he had said, sign here, this is for gap insurance, I would have said no. I don't want gap insurance because there should be no gap. He just said, sign here, sign here, sign here. And I was naive enough to think I was just signing up for the car. And I signed it. Big mistake. Another red flag is that after the down payment, after I'd done all the signing, after they got their money for the down payment, I'm trying to be transparent, so I'll definitely be giving you all the numbers so that you see where I'm coming from with the scam. After I'd gotten through with the finances and signed, I asked for my receipts, my papers. Mind you, they had taken my down payment, which was a substantial amount of money. They said they would give it to me when the car was delivered. It felt a little weird. When you buy something, you get a receipt, even if it's going to be delivered later, which the car was supposed to come later that day. It didn't. But I was kind of weirded out. Like, is this something that they do? They wouldn't give you papers, like things I've just signed up for? Young, dumb, inexperienced. I just accepted it. Don't ever accept that. At least ask for basic receipt. They should be able to provide something. But I accepted it and I went home. And the car was not delivered that day. It was not delivered the next day. The day after was Sunday. They were closed. It was delivered on a Monday. Before even the car could arrive, I went home and I had a panic attack. It just didn't sit right with me. I was literally bawling my eyes out because I'm like, I think I got taken advantage of. I was thinking they just signed me up for a bunch of stuff and maybe I was gonna pay like $5,000, maybe even $8,000 more. I was crying, bawling my eyes out. I was talking to my sister on the phone. I was like, I just don't feel right about this at all. She's like, have you seen the papers? I was like, no. She's like, then why are you crying? Just wait for the papers to be delivered. But I knew because I felt that something was so wrong. And this time I was not ignoring my feelings. And I wasn't wrong because no later was the car delivered on Monday that my worst fears, like, well, not only was it validated, like it was beyond my worst fears. It was actually a nightmare. So the car was delivered to my apartment. I come down. They're just helping me set up some few basic stuff. I get the financing paper. I'm absolutely eager to open it because I'm thinking, what does this loan look like? Nothing could have prepared me for this loan. Because mind you, a Toyota Corolla hatchback, 2023, brand new, SE goes for an MSRP below $24,000. It's like the $23,000 range. Nothing could have prepared me for the total cost of this car, which was $40,448.80. Let me say that again. Came up to a total of $40,448.80. I will write it here just in case, just so that you know you didn't hear it wrong. And I know some of you may think, well, maybe it's the interest rate. Maybe it's a term. Toyota was actually running a promotion at the time that if you had a 48-month or less car loan, you get a 3.99% interest rate. And I qualified. Well, I got the 3.99% and still over $40,000. I just freaked out. And I asked the guy, and he's like, oh, this is not him. This is finance. This is the man who literally was my car salesman. I put down an $8,000 down payment, more than 30% for the actual MSRP of this car. Now, of course, you have to pay taxes, and I asked not to be included in any type of extra packages, warranties. So how do I go buy a car for less than $24,000, put down $8,000, and I owed $31,948.80. I owed more than the car was worth. Substantially more. I was paying about $16,000 more than the MSRP of a Toyota Corolla. If I wanted to pay $40,000, I would have gotten a more luxurious car. When I tell you that I was looking at the papers and they signed me up for all the crap, all the nonsense that I asked not to be signed for, you wouldn't believe it. Gap insurance that I said I didn't want 100 times, it was on there. Because when I made my calculation, there should have been no gap. But because now I put down $8,000 on a $23,500 car, approximately, there was a gap because they were signing me up for warranties, interior, exterior insurance. Anything that you can think of a car company signing you up for, guess what, friend? I got it. They were just tacking it on. Beyond that, I asked for a 3-year loan. Again, something I said over and over again. I asked for a 3-year loan and an out-of-door price. Guess what? I got none of that. None of it. They gave me a 4-year loan. And the reason why I suspect they gave me a 4-year loan was because if they gave me a 3-year loan, my monthly payment would have been super high that they could not justify it. But even beyond that, I think they just wanted to get as much interest out of me as they could. Because the longer term, the more interest they can get out of you. And they couldn't sign me up for a 5-year term because I was there for the 3.99% interest rate and I qualified for it. But they could extend the term and make me pay more in interest. When I tell you they tried to be sneaky by also not giving me an itemized list, to this day, I don't know how much the actual basic MSRP of the car was because I never got it. Like, you want to see it? You can't see it. You can't because they wouldn't give it to me. The first cost before they tacked on everything was $30,000. They just called it units and packages for $30,000 and then they tacked on everything. But the worst excuse, because when I called them about the car, gap insurance, the warranty, 4-year term, he said something about since this was my first car, I couldn't get a 3-year term. If you know anything about buying your first car, somehow you can't get a 3-year term, please let me know in the comment section because I have never heard about it. Until this day, nobody's ever said that to me, like you can't get a 3-year term because your first car. Who made that rule up? State law or federal law? Or just like a made-up law by him? So he said that's why he had to give it to me, and that's why he also had to put all the gap insurance and warranties, and after I make about 12 payments they can come off. Now you know that's a lie because of what happens later. I was angry. I didn't know a lot of my options, but there was a way I was gonna stand up for myself, and that was coming soon. And the interest I was going to pay within 4 years was going to be $2,519.66, and my monthly car payment was $665.60. I was frustrated. I wanted to take the car back, was just looking for anything that I can do, but God doesn't disappoint. Like a week later, 2 at most, the feedback survey came through. It came from Toyota and it came from the dealership. And this is where I know that God plans our steps in life, because had I not worked for a car company, I would have thought this feedback survey thing meant nothing. Because a lot of people are like, oh, what is this? Like, it's crap. But I knew from my work experience at a car manufacturing company where I was a quality engineer intern, there was a big conversation about the fact that the dealerships were owned by third parties. So Toyota doesn't own Toyota dealerships. Ford doesn't own Ford dealerships. Stellantis doesn't own Stellantis dealerships. Now, if you know about Tesla and their fights insights with that. We're not gonna go into that today. One of the things the car company was always discussing was how to get feedback from customers and how seriously they took that. And they wanted to incentivize dealerships to treat customers well, some sort of advantages they get by having good customer feedback. The car company take the feedback of customers very seriously. We would sit in a room and review categories of complaints from customers. And because of that experience, because I was in those meetings, because I asked questions and knew some of the ins and outs, not to the best of detail, but in my time there, I learned a lot. And I just knew that this survey was gonna make its rounds and it was gonna make an impact. If not for anything, it was going to give them a bad look as a dealership. I took every character to make sure that I detailed my entire complaints to Toyota as a company and to the dealership. So I'm just gonna read it to you. I almost did not go through with this purchase. The lack of transparency is atrocious, especially in the financing department. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. How is it possible to go purchase a car worth $23,000 and end up later receiving the car and financing papers totaling over $40,000? I felt very taken advantage of. I was signed up for a number of unwanted services. The financing papers did not demonstrate an itemization for a total of $31,000. I was denied purchase of the car if I did not allow myself to be subjected to thousands of dollars of unwanted packages. This is cruelty to a customer. The fact that if I did not want useless and obvious cash grabbing tactics, I will be denied a purchase of a car. I was told that the options were from the manufacturer, which is obviously not true. As a person who worked as an engineer for a car manufacturer, this is appalling and bad reflection on Toyota as a brand. This is definitely my first and last Toyota vehicle. This was a traumatizing experience. Obvious cash grabbing include nitrogen air, which is so ridiculous considering the natural air already is 78% nitrogen. The remaining is rather redundant. The obvious overpriced car mats is just disturbing. By the way, the car mats were like $250. And how is it possible for interior and exterior protections to be included in a car? That's just dreadful. And let me not get into the lies about the window tint, only for the car to come and be delivered without it and being told to come at a later date for it to be done. And I can't even get into all of the others because I am sure the dealership was too embarrassed about it. Also, that they did not give me an itemized list for all the other ridiculous charges. I cannot wait to be done with this and put this experience behind me. I can write a book about how bad this experience is, but it all comes to one conclusion. This is my last time at this dealership. And so that was the feedback I wrote to the dealership and to Toyota. I was very emotional. I was saying how traumatizing this experience was, which it was. For me to be taken advantage of, I wanted to communicate that with Toyota. I am glad I did, because let me tell you, not even a week after I submitted this feedback, when I tell you I got a call, I was at work one morning and I think it was a Wednesday. I vividly remember the man calling me and being like, hey, I've worked at this dealership for over 20 years. I work in financing and I would love for you to come back if you want to redo your financing. Now you said, what now? I was like, okay, of course I do. I would love to come back and redo my financing, because he had read my review. So he's like, yeah, we'll give you the 3-year term. We can just go over everything, make sure that you're satisfied with the financing. I was like, okay. He's like, can you come by tomorrow? I'm like, no, I'm working tomorrow, but I can come by Friday. He's like, can you be here like, I think it was like 9 or 10 a.m. You'll be the first customer we take care of. He was speaking my language. Yeah, sure. I will be there Friday morning. Be the first customer there. Friday, I got a call on my way there. They were like, hey, are you coming? I was like, yes, I am. Yes, I am coming. Now, let me give you some of the details of my new financing agreements, because I still think I was taken advantage of even after this. Definitely not to the expense of the first one. You'll see why I say that. Number one, I got my 3-year term. The man who said he couldn't give me one because it was my first car, well, apparently this manager's worked there for over 20 years. He didn't agree because he gave me that 3-year term. As for an itemized list, I got a semi-itemized list, but not a full one. The $250 car mats I still had, and then the USB ports that were like $75. I didn't get an itemized list for all of it. They just grouped the entire purchase. That used to be total $31,000. That was total now for like $26,000. So much less. He took off the warranty. He took off the gap insurance. So now the total cost went down to $28,765.35 for the actual car price. And the total financing, $20,765.35, which makes sense because now there's no gap and there's no need for gap insurance. You only need gap insurance if there's going to be any point that the car is worth less than you owe on the car. If you get a 3-year term and you put a substantial amount of money down, there is no point in paying off the car where depreciation should hit so hard where the car will be worth less than what I owe on the car. The total interest I was going to pay within 3 years was down to $1,343.33. The car cost plus the interest would have totaled $30,608.68. And my monthly payment was $614.13. So I came out of that financing with over about $10,000 less in total cost, but then also a lower term, so from 4 years to 3 years, and a lower car payment. Who would have guessed that it shouldn't have been that much in the first place? And I still think I was taken advantage of because there was no way I should have been paying that much. I was just so happy that it had gone down substantially that I was just okay with. I just wasn't gonna deal with it anymore. I took what I could get. Now in the future, would that be the case? I think I'll fight a little bit harder, but honestly I was kind of tired at that point. I just went ahead and took that deal. But you know what I said to myself? Y'all ain't gonna make money off of me. You all are not going to make that interest off of me because I do not like to deal in bad faith. I don't like people who see people that they know are less knowledgeable, that they know are less experienced, and decide to take advantage of them. So I promised myself that, you know what, that 3-year term with that interest of like just over $1,300, you all are not going to get that out of me. Went to my budget and I started cutting out so much for my budget. Like if it was something I could live without, I cut it out. I did not eat out for months. I just threw myself into paying off this car. I even took some of my emergency fund to go towards this car. And if it wasn't rent, food, basic needs, it was going towards my car payment. I was paying my car payment on a weekly basis. It didn't matter how little I was squeezing out of like my utility, my food budget, my transportation budget. I was doing everything possible to pay off that car as soon as possible. And guess what? I did that. I also made myself available at work. So there was a time where I needed to work overtime. I did not mind. I was always available because I was trying to make any type of extra money that I could. I also started grad school, so it's not like I could get a second job. I kept my expenses as low as possible. I also lowered my contribution to my 401k and I stopped contributing to my Roth IRA. So I had up to April of this year to max out my Roth IRA for last year. But most importantly, it was staying focused and staying consistent. And every time I saw that car, it just reminded me, like those $250 car mats, those 2 USB cords, $75. Talk about a scam. Every time I saw those things, it just reminded me what I was working so hard for. And by the grace of God, September of 2023, I paid off my car. I made my last car payment. I used some of my emergency fund to just finish it off. And when I finished, I was very low on cash. Literally nothing to spare. Like I had an emergency hit. Like it would have been really hard for me to find cash to do so. I did have some emergency fund invested. It was like in mid-September, I paid it off. It was absolutely free because I knew they weren't going to make that much money off of me. So the total that I paid was $28,931.38. And the total interest they got out of me was $166.03. I love that. I love that for me. My final thoughts on the scam, and let me know if you think it's a scam. Like I know in Texas we have high sales tax, but still that was not the majority of it. So I still think I overpaid for the car. Let me know in the comment section if you bought a car like that before, how much you paid, if you feel comfortable sharing it. And what I definitely learned is that closed mouths don't get fed. When you feel injustice is happening, speak up for yourself. If I didn't stand up for myself then, I don't know the other stuff that I wouldn't have stood up for myself for. So we need to start making it a habit to stand up for ourselves in every situation. When we see an injustice happening to us or to other people, stand up, speak up. Had I not spoken up, they would have gotten away with it. But because I said something, they dropped like $10,000. I definitely promised myself from now on that I will stand my ground. If I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, I would walk out. I would trust my feelings when I feel like something bad is happening that I don't feel right with, doesn't sit right with me. I will walk out. I will always speak up for myself. I would always stand my ground. And for my next car, I will be buying in cash. Take this or leave it. That's it. So with that, I am bringing the story to an end. It definitely did take a little bit of courage to share this, because I don't think a lot of us like to admit when we've been taken advantage of, or we're in situations where we were less than smart, especially since I talk about finances so much on this channel. That it would be only fair to hopefully share this so that if anybody has gone through this, know that you're not alone. And if you're on the market to buy a new car, just things to watch out for. I like to learn from other people's experiences, and it's only fair that people learn through my experience. So let me know in the comment section what you think about the story. Do you have a story where you have felt taken advantage of by a car company? Did you stand up for yourself? Would you do better next time? Let's have a whole conversation in the comment section. And remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring the notification bell so you do not miss out on any of my future videos. And share this video with anybody who's in the market for a car who may benefit from this video. So thank you all again, and until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, don't get taken advantage of by a car company, speak up for yourself, and if you have any questions that I can answer, also leave in the comment section. And bye.